I was trying to understand like which angle I really want to go with this because I think this is a very important topic, especially with everything that's going on and taking place. And we'll dive into that a little later. But I do want to kind of speak to the gentleman about our women. Our women. One of the biggest things that has been an issue with our women is accountability. Accountability, and that word is on the thumbnail and is in the title. Accountability. We had this constant talk back and forth across all these platforms about women being able to be accountable for their actions, particularly their mouth these days, right? Because their mouth have been foul, really foul. And when it's almost like you don't really think it's a reality until it happens to you. And unfortunately, I am a victim. It has happened to me currently. So I'm just want to come out. I heard this was a safe place to be and to speak out on it. So, fellas, I'm going to speak on it if you don't mind. Is there anybody triggered by these words thus far? I just want to make sure I'm being courteous. I know we got some new people. You know, I don't want to step on any toes. Have to bring out that hurt feelings report. But if I do, I understand. I know what time it is. I mean, what? We all human, right? We supposed to feel. That's what I heard. So let's talk about saving your tears, saving your tears and accountability. How do you guys feel in general, just with accountability? Have you guys like? Do you think that most women? We're not talking about all, right? And we just in order for us to have solutions, we have to address the problem, or at least be able to identify what the problem is. And then we have to have on the other side, people have to acknowledge that there is a problem. Because if they do not acknowledge that there's a problem, then how can we get to the solution? It's always this back and forth about what it is that you guys are not talking about shit. But again, I'm a victim. It's currently just happened. And I was in a state of mind where I just couldn't believe what the hell was going on. And this is just a conversation, right? I'm not talking about the Roe v. Wade. We're going to get there about that. But this is just in general. I'm going to go around the panel real quick. Just throw your 2 cents in, and it got to be long, but just talk about women and accountability. What are your thoughts, just so we can have a little bit of context of which direction you may be going in later. But I was speaking once, fellas. I mean, I know it's a
accountability, man. Accountability for to the like. I'm making a thought change process, right? The modern black woman. Right, I'm not gonna keep talking about other races because I don't deal with them. The modern black woman, from what my thoughts is that accountability is like raid to roaches to them. It's like raid to roaches. Anything, whether they try to put it off on you, gaslight it back to you. Your mama didn't love you. What's going on? Who hurt you? Anything to get around the point that they need to be held accountable in the situation. That's my take on
it. Yeah, I'll jump in real quick. I'll say, you know, I done watched on these panels in this space again for the last year and a half, and you know, it's just amazing that, you know, when the conversation is on men, you know, for the most part, you see men acknowledge, accept, we need to do better, we need to do this, or I accept that challenge, or I reject that premise, or whatever, blah, blah, blah. I literally just saw you talked about Amir and them having a great show. I literally saw during that show a conversation that was being held about women. Then it was pivoted to what about men, though, right? So shout out to the late, great KS and the recognition he received on the BET Awards, rightfully so. But when he said accountability is like kryptonite to the modern black woman, to Ricky's point, absolutely spot on and undefeated.
All right.
Just to keep it simple, you know, the modern black woman, I would even say like old school women, you know what I'm saying? And so modern doesn't necessarily reference like a certain age, but it represents a mentality. Because I know older women that if I've talked to them about the decisions that they've made, they always put the blame on somebody else and not themselves. So I just want to add that particular caveat that when we talk about black modern women, that it's a mindset and not an age group. And so they struggle with the aspect of having accountability because they've never had to have it, And so as a result, that's what it is that we deal with, and then they also teach it to the young ladies that are coming after them.
I'll say, I think, it's funny because I think the modern woman does take a lot of accountability. I just think she takes accountability for the easy stuff. I'm too nice. I was too giving. I gave too many chances. Most of the time when I hear accountability from a lot of women, it's accountability about the things that really make them a good person. Oh, what's your greatest weakness? Oh, I'm just too loving. That's the accountability I hear a lot of them take, but not the accountability surrounding the deep issues that are really out to impact or fix our community.
Okay. Next up, anybody else? Rio?
I think Real Nathan was talking, but he was on mute.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. I'm not used to having the mute on. I was going to say, let me piggyback off of what you said, Michael. I think that's the issue, right? The issue is downplaying and dismissing the level of culpability and what you do or what harm you bring to a situation. I think it's the delusion is the issue. And I think from my experience, what I've seen and, just in general, is that you have some women who have a hard time distinguishing between a reason and an excuse. And so perception at the end of the day becomes reality. And that's why it's so difficult to hold some women accountable, because they truly believe that they're not wrong. And I think that's the pathology behind it.
Hey, Nathan, let me ask you a question just real quick. Were you ever in the military?
No, law enforcement.
Okay, because in the military, I learned the phrase, my perception is your reality. You want to change your reality, change my perception.
There you go. Absolutely.
It's rather unfortunate how, when women perceive accountability as something negative or something to kind of shade or slight, but in reality, it's rather more of an opportunity to kind of acknowledge oneself, one's shortcomings, and kind of making the necessary adjustments and realizing the errors in their ways. Accountability is more an opportunity for growth and kind of understanding, as opposed to this sort of negative connotation that it tends to carry. And I think that because a lot of women feel that it has a negative connotation to it, they tend to kind of deflect from, that accountability and really take a moment to do some self-reflection. So
I agree with a lot that was said. When I think about one taking responsibility for their actions, I think about what does it look like when they actually do it. And Michael spoke to this point somewhat as well. And I thought even further about, okay, well, what about when they do take responsibility for the bigger things? There's often an exaggerated response. Well, it's always my fault, or I guess you're perfect, or they start crying, right? And they find ways to pull on your emotions to kind of lessen the severity of your reaction or whatever the repercussions may be. And I think they learn this behavior in childhood. And I think girls somewhat get a pass with a lot of things, whereas little boys are kind of taught to kind of man up and own it, right? And so it's kind of hard to change that behavior, in a relationship when it's not really your job to raise them, right? And it would take a lot of undoing before you get there. And that's a lot of self-work that they would have to be willing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, me personally, I just feel like accountability is like, for them, it's like saying sorry. They don't know how to do it. They don't say sorry. For women to say sorry, their version of sorry is being nice to you, cooking you food, maybe having sex with you. It's like, nah, I'm empty and still feel like you abuse the situation. So it's just not something they're used to. Sorry is not in vocabulary. Accountability is not in the vocabulary, and they just say sorry in other ways. But I need to hear that 5-letter word, and then everything is okay.
Let me add to that real quick. A technique that's used is I'm sorry you're upset, or I'm sorry I made you mad, right? So it's a way to kind of makes you believe that you're the problem still.
I'm sorry you took it that way.
I'm sorry you took it that way. Yeah. I'm sorry your mom didn't teach you better, right?
That's that passive aggressive.
Right.
Nathan, you mentioned that you used to work in law enforcement. Do you find that a lot of women can kind of cry their way out of a ticket? That in that same situation, a man really wouldn't get a pass?
Yeah. And then also looks, that's a thing too. Pretty privilege, that's a thing. So yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, and not only that, I think perfect example just jumped in my head. Domestics, women get the benefit of the doubt against men. We saw that with like the Gabby Petito case, for those who are familiar with that. We saw that recently with the baby and his girl. She's cursing out the cops. He called the police on her. She's running all throughout the rooms and all that. She's a danger. She could have hurt the officer. So it's this idea that women can't be dangerous, right? So they play on that.
Johnny Depp, so
Johnny Depp, perfect example.
Cost that man so much money now. Now he's finally gonna get that money back, but all those years, God forbid, he didn't get. Look at all that gone for lies.
Well, good point with that Johnny Depp situation. They had I broke down a video. They had a domestic call. Well, he recorded a conversation between them, and he was talking about, "Hey, you hit me. You were hitting on me. You punched me." And she was like, "I didn't punch you. I barely touched you.
I hit you.
Like,
I didn't punch you. I hit you."
Yeah, I didn't punch you. I hit you. Like, those are two different things, right? Like, so that's that thing from earlier. Someone mentioned that they try to downplay that accountability. He's like, it's a closed fist, and you put force behind it. And then she said, "You're a man." That something to that effect. You're a man that doesn't hurt you.
Of course, like we don't have. We're not supposed to have emotions. We're not supposed to feel pain.
Right.
We are superhuman to them.
Correct. So. Correct. And someone mentioned earlier about the exaggeration. They exaggerate events. It's like, oh, he pushed me down the steps, or, he threw me into the wall. And then you watch the video and you're like, "Ma'am, you tripped. He was nowhere near you." Right. So I see a lot of that. Unfortunately, some women can take an event and then put a little sauce on it and then make it out to be something that it actually isn't. And that's a lot of times how a lot of brothers get in trouble, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I think it's a lot that's being said right now, and I think it's very important because in these situations, if you're not thinking logical, then women will walk you down that path. They'll walk you down that path and have you confused in what your original thought was, what your original intention was. Like they'll take a moment and like they'll just stay right there in that moment. It could be your tone. It could be anything to distract from being able to hold themselves accountable. So I think you guys are talking some real shit right here. And I wanted to really like play that over, because if a man doesn't hold himself accountable, it's strange, right? I'm not really sure. There are men that don't hold themselves accountable. I get it, right? But one of the things I'm teaching my son is making sure that he holds himself accountable, because if you go out here blaming everybody else and playing victim, you're not going to be able to last in this world. And one of the things that I appreciate from like Logic, recently he's been saying that when you see this bad behavior, we have to check it. We have to check it, right? And I was sitting here like, should we check it right then? Should you stop it? But if nobody checks it, they will never know. I get it. It may be a little bit too much in the moment, but somebody has to speak up. Somebody has to let them know, because there's no telling how many times they've been getting away with murder, so to speak. I'm just speaking figuratively, right? And then you have like the Antons talk about these unruly women. They are reckless out here. Reckless. And not enough people are speaking up on it. You literally have women that are in households right now that are exhibiting this behavior and it's going unchecked, and they think that it's okay. I want to kind of expand on it a little bit, man. Just just in that moment, like, what do you guys see as happening? Do you guys even know how to recognize what's going on? Do you guys speak up on it? Should you address it a certain type of way?
Hey, Lapeef, I'll just say this just to what you said. And so I'm a minister in my local church. And one of the things I'm coming to the realization just with a lot of what's going on, it goes back to the scene in the garden of Eden. Eve takes a bite of the apple and she looks to her husband and says, well, you have some too. And I'll be honest with you, I think all of us have been Adam in that point where she took a bite of the apple and said, well, if you love me, you'll bite this apple too, even if it was against our moral compass, even if it was against what we know to be better. And I think one of the prevailing issues is women want to be worshipped the way that God is supposed to be worshipped. And I think that's where the problem lies. And it's identifying when said woman is looking to be worshipped rather than be led.
I'm gonna be honest with y'all. 100% transparent, man. Looking at these last events that went on in the last couple of days and the responses I get, I can't speak for nobody else. The responses I've been getting, like, it's getting to the point in my mind where tell me if I'm shooting in the dark, fellas, but it's like in my mind, it's like it's not even worth it. That's where my mental capacity getting with these modern hyenas, bro. Why? Like, why waste I could break it down to you logically. I could break it down to you to the nth, and you can't question what I said, but you always try to throw it back. They always come back to, oh, it's your fault. It's the man's fault. It's the man's fault. So tell me this, right? How can y'all say y'all want power with no responsibility?
So being a woman, that's what they want. All
Right.
thing, because that, you know what's funny? My girlfriend or whatever the case is, whenever I mess up, it's like, you did XYZ, which is fine because I'm a man, I take accountability. She mess up, now all of a sudden it turns to we. Like, how did we get involved in your mistake, but my mistake is my mistake and your mistake is our mistake? Like, it's so confusing to me, but that's how they work. It's like, we're a team until it's somebody else's fault. It's like, well, I'm just here. You're supposed to lead the way. How did you let this happen?
But this is what I'm saying, bro. Like, you can't have the power position without the responsibility that comes with it. Like, ladies, y'all need to pick a goddamn story. Y'all need to pick a story, right? Either the black man, he ain't shit and he ain't worth being with. He not worth being a leader, right? Or y'all fucking up at y'all job.
I think that
the other.
I think that the issue is when we talk about accountability, the problem is you can't complain about the people that you're actually selecting. And a lot of men don't really care until you have some women who will put out a false narrative about men. And then the men look at you and say, well, that's who you picked. Because as men, we know that all we do is offer our services. A woman has to accept it. So if you see that, I think the bigger issue that a lot of women are not accepting is that they don't know how to pick good men. They don't know how to distinguish between them. And they have a hard time distinguishing between their wants and their needs. So they focus on their wants. That's what they go after. And then they worry about their needs after something they need is more relevant than their want. And they realize that the guy that they pick, the Tyrone or the Pookie, right, who appears to be a man, he has this image of like a performative masculine man, but in fact he really isn't. And then you get mad when it doesn't work out because you need him to do real man stuff. And he can't hold up to what a man is supposed to hold up to. And then you blame the man as if it's his fault. A dog is going to be a dog. A woman has to give him a bone.